I'm not fairly certain I know why I got an alert from Customs saying that they thought I had a kilo of drugs getting shipped to me, because this totally doesn't look like a package full of drugs. What's going on today, Internet? I am CellPhish, and we're going to take a look at the Powkiddy X17. All right, today, Internet, we're going to look at the X17 by Powkiddy, and this is part of my ongoing saga here, or ongoing quest to find a good 7-inch handheld in that sub $100 range. I have yet to find one before, but this could definitely be the device for that. So this Powkiddy here is it's pretty decent. It's got some good shoulder buttons, which are great. ABXY, they feel really good. The only thing I don't like is how flush they get. So they pretty much go even with the shell, and it's fine. They don't get stuck. I just wish maybe they had just a touch more on the outside. You've got your normal start and select buttons here. You have your G button, which is, I think, is supposed to be a Google button, but it really just goes back to the home screen. Power button, you have your volume up and down. You have this D-pad here, which we'll talk about a little bit here in a minute, but this is kind of like an old school D-pad for fighting games. And then you have your Joy-Con, which is just a Switch style Joy-Con, which does have L3. Not very many that have the L3 option. A couple things right off the bat. So they want you to use a Hello Ducky app thing when you get this device in order to play, download, and emulate your games. That app, actually, my Google account deleted it. So when I signed in, as soon as I signed into Google, go in the Play Store, it actually deleted it even though I told it not to. And it came back with a warning saying it was too dangerous, and it deleted it. If you have Google One, which I have, which is kind of like their not only storage, but also like their VPN services, it will not allow you to run this device if you're signed into Google One. The app is still on here. I can't see it. It didn't actually delete it. It just disabled it. And if I go in the app library, I can see it, but I can't use it. But I just put some emulators on instead, so it works more or less the same. Otherwise, you can't access your games either without emulators. You really have no way to access your games. So what I originally did was put on RetroArch just so I could get to my basic stuff. We're not going to go through your NES, Super NES type games because we know they're going to play on here. Everything like that will play on any of these devices. You can get a $10 device and play Super Mario Brothers. So first thing I think we're going to do is go over the specs here real quick. So I'll throw up the spec sheet for you. We're rocking an MT8163 quad core A53 1.3 gigahertz processor with 2 gigs of DDR3 RAM, 32 gigs of onboard memory. Got a 7-inch IPS HD screen at 600 by 124. It's running Android 7, which is a little old school. It's got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth support built in. So getting to the nuts and bolts of it, you have those 2 USB ports on the top for controllers. You have that HDMI port. You have an in USB-C. It uses a barrel charger for charging. It's got ROMs with Happy Chick, like I discussed earlier. Let's go into a little bit with this device. It's got a pretty basic UI. It's something that Powkiddy uses on some devices. It's not real uncommon. I'm trying to think of the other devices it uses, and I can't think of them off the top of my head, but not my favorite UI. It's almost too basic, so you can't figure out what you're doing because you can't find things that you want to do. For instance, you go to settings, and it's pretty much set up for the main things you might use, but anybody who's ever used Android before, the advanced settings is just your normal run-of-the-mill Android settings. It's not advanced at all. In fact, a lot of the stuff is the same stuff that's on the regular screen. So I'm not sure about that. The other thing I don't like is you only have a couple of choices when you want to move an app. You can't move where it is on the screen. So say I want the apps to actually use over here. I can't do that, but I can put them in one of these 3 folders. But other than that, I can't do anything with the app. It's just stuck. And it goes into this in the order that you put them in. Let's go through a little N64 here just to kind of get an idea of what it looks like. I was playing some snowboarding earlier. It actually looks pretty good, and it's upscale resolution. Gotta love those rear firing speakers. This is not the most exciting game to watch somebody play, so we're going to get off of this one real quick. All right, we're going to try a little F-Zero here, which is one of the hardest games to emulate on N64, so we'll give this a shot here. As you can see, it's running just fine at 2 times resolution with a stretched screen, actually. It does just fine for being an 8-year-old processor. All right, now we got a little GT64 going. I'm going to be honest with you, I've never played this game. Now it feels like it's doing pretty good. So I don't know if it just had a little hiccup there in the beginning, but now it feels like it's running just fine. Again, I'm running at 2 times resolution at normal speed. We could probably, if we wanted to, probably run this at 250 times speed if you are one of those people. And let's see what this does. Oh yeah, just fine. 250% of normal speed, this thing runs just fine, which I typically don't do on racing games just because you're usually going pretty fast as it is. Next, I thought it'd be good to show a couple of games here and kind of show you what I got going on here. So we're running it on a 16:9 aspect ratio with auto skip on. It's okay without auto skip on, but this thing actually does pretty well like this. So I just put a couple games on here. I was running this the other day, so we're going to run it a pretty solid 60 frames per second, though, with a 16:9 aspect ratio and auto skip on. I don't know if you can hear how crappy those speakers kind of sound in the back, but they don't sound good. And now we're getting the bobber on the bottom here. This would be great if I could move. I'm a little baffled by it. When I go to record this, it no longer wants to work at 60 frames per second. So I don't know if I just need to reboot the device or whatever, but it was working at 60 frames per second. So the game itself runs just fine. It's the audio that's really terrible. And actually you can see we just did a huge frame dip. So the game actually does a pretty good frame dip once you get going. And the audio is where you can see it even more than just in the game itself. But now we're running at 40 frames. I don't remember if Crazy Taxi was 60 frames. At least that gives you a little idea of how great Dreamcast works on here. So it really isn't a Dreamcast machine either. Kind of tops out at PS1, which is kind of disappointing for a 7-inch screen. This thing has a beautiful screen. Speaking of which, let's get that off of there. I wish that you could play some more higher end games, but this chipset is 8 years old. So it's not a real great chipset for something with this big of a screen. Where I play this most is through my Moonlight. So if you guys need help trying to figure out what Moonlight's all about these days, since everything changed, we haven't played this game in a while. Wait, hold on. You get it? Yep. There we go. Now you're gonna have to bear with me. I haven't played this game in at least 5 or 6 years, probably. But it looks pretty good on here. So it streams very well. And the screen, now you can tell how good the screen really is. It's probably even hard to tell on my camera here. But if you see it in person, it looks really good. It's got really good shading and stuff to it too. It's a little bit glossy, but I guess that works out just fine if you don't have a hand mirror. I can't put this footage on YouTube, but it looks really good. So I guess this just kind of gives you an idea of how good it'll look. So this is the PS3 version of Lollipop Chainsaw. So looks good. Wish you could see my computer screen, but it's exactly on. There's no latency at all. So that's just my quick dive into the Powkiddy X17. Oddly enough, that wasn't even the device that was supposed to be coming to me. So I guess maybe we'll have another one here to show you soon. So what are my pros and cons of this device? Pros, it's got a great 7-inch screen. Streaming through Moonlight is phenomenal. So it does also work on the PlayStation app as well as Xbox, but Moonlight I think works the best. The buttons have a pretty good feeling to them. Like I said, except for the D-pad, it's a little wonky. HDMI output, which is really nice if you want to be able to use this as a console at some points and be able to play on the screen. Some of my biggest pet peeves for devices like this are proprietary barrel chargers and rear firing speakers. Because if I want to play a game, I don't want everybody else in the room to hear what I'm playing. That sound should be playing for me, not for everybody else. And as far as a barrel charger goes, a proprietary charger really just kind of leaves you at the whim of only having one charger. So if it gets lost or broken, you're kind of at the whim of the company to see if you can get another charger again. So a little disappointing to see that they put those in this device. The USB controller ports on the top, I couldn't get to work. So I don't actually have USB controllers, but I stole some from my son to try to get to work. I tried multiple different controllers, could not get those USB ports to work at all with any of the chargers that I tried. So I'm not sure if that's just specific to this device or if it's having problems because it started deleting apps. It's got a couple more that says it's going to delete. By delete, I mean just to hide them, apparently, because it doesn't actually delete them. That's another thing that's on my con list. When Google comes up and says you do not want this app on your device, I tend to side with Google. Another thing is the processor is 8 years old, so it's old and slow, and it definitely feels like an 8-year-old processor. So that's unfortunate because it's such a nice device with a 7-inch screen, and 7-inch screens are kind of becoming the thing. So when this came out, seeing it's running Android 7, it probably was a high-end device, but the price has never changed on it, which is kind of unfortunate that the price hasn't come down. This is roughly a $100 device, and I feel like this could probably be a $60 device. And the overlay is the last thing I don't like. It's simple, but it's really clunky. Everything's there, but you can't actually put anything where you want it or personalize it, which is really disappointing. I don't really need the folder feature, but if I can't even put things where I want them within the one screen, is this the right device for you? Sub $100, which is phenomenal for a 7-inch screen that looks really this good. I feel like there's a lot wasted on it. With a little luck, maybe the community will get behind this device and fix up the operating system. It does have the option to load another operating system, but as far as I can tell, nobody's found a clean ROM yet in order to do that. And most of your applications, at least a PS1, run perfectly, even with upscaling. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if this is something you're looking at. And as always, thank you for taking the time to hang out with me today.